It's no exaggeration to say that the Palestinian economy has been fundamentally deformed by Israeli restrictions over the past 2 decades. Bombing, separation walls, land seizures, restricted food and electricity access, and what many describe as open-air prisons. These words seem impossible to associate with everyday life in the 21st century, yet here we are. So what exactly is life like for Palestinians, and what is actually happening on the ground? Today, we are diving deep into the Palestinian economy, a story that reveals how political conflict translates into economic hardship, restricted opportunities, and profound inequality. Let's break this down. First, we need to understand something crucial about Palestine's standing in the world. In 2012, the United Nations passed a resolution granting Palestine status as a non-member observer state. Think of it this way. You get a seat at the table, you can participate in international discussions, and you can speak, but you cannot vote. Only 2 entities in the world have this status. Palestine and the Holy See, or Vatican City, are unique in this regard. As of 2019, 138 out of 193 UN member states officially recognize Palestine as a country. This includes major powers like China, India, and Russia. But significant nations including the United States, France, Japan, and South Korea have not yet extended formal recognition. Because of these ongoing international disagreements about Palestine's status, organizations like the World Bank and IMF don't call it Palestine directly. Instead, they use the abbreviation WBG, West Bank and Gaza. So if you ever see WBG in economic reports, that's what they're referring to. Here's where things get really eye-opening. Palestine isn't just poor, it's fractured into 2 distinct economic zones with dramatically different conditions. According to the World Bank's 2022 data, the GDP per capita in the West Bank is 4,458. In Gaza, it's just 1 down to 257 dirhams. That means the West Bank's economy is 3.5 times larger per person than Gaza's. But wait, it gets worse. Right across the wall, in Israel, the GDP per capita is 54,660. That's 12 times higher than the West Bank and 43 times higher than Gaza. So here's the question that really matters. How can 2 adjacent territories have such staggering economic differences? And within Palestine itself, why does the West Bank do 3.5 times better than Gaza? The answer lies in the history and the politics, and that history is complicated. From the 16th century through the end of World War I, this region was part of the Ottoman Empire. After World War I, the British took over. Then came 1947, when the United Nations proposed Resolution 181, a plan to divide the land into a Jewish state and an Arab state, Israel and Palestine. On May 15, 1948, the British ended their mandate and Israel was immediately established. Arab nations saw this as an existential threat and responded with military force, launching what became the First Middle East War. By 1949, an armistice ended the fighting, but the consequences fundamentally reshaped the region. Israel controlled significantly more territory than the 1947 UN plan had allocated. The remaining areas were split, the West Bank went under Jordanian administration, and Gaza fell under Egyptian control. Palestine essentially disappeared from the map for nearly 2 decades. This period is sometimes called the disappearing era. Interestingly, Jordan actually tried to integrate West Bankers fully into Jordanian society. They even granted them citizenship. But the Palestinians had a strong sense of national identity and resisted assimilation. This cultural pride ultimately led to the creation of the Palestine Liberation Organization in 1964, or PLO. Though it mixed political and military functions, the PLO became the internationally recognized representative of Palestinian people. You've probably heard of Yasser Arafat, the iconic PLO chairman. Then came 1967. In just 6 days, starting on June 5th, Israel defeated the combined forces of Egypt, Jordan, and Syria in what's called the Six-Day War. Israel seized the West Bank, Gaza, Egypt's Sinai Peninsula, and Syria's Golan Heights. While they later returned Sinai to Egypt, they maintained control over the West Bank and Gaza. Rather than immediately assimilate Palestinians, which was unrealistic, Israel implemented what's best described as comprehensive military, political, and economic control. This wasn't an accident or a temporary measure, it was systematic. From 1987 onward, Palestinians began what became known as the First Intifada, an uprising involving demonstrations, stone throwing, strikes, and acts of resistance. About 2,000 Palestinians and 160 Israelis lost their lives. The resistance led to an important moment in 1988 when the PLO declared Palestinian statehood. That same year, an organization called the Islamic Center transformed itself into Hamas, the Islamic resistance movement, a force that would become central to Palestinian politics and resistance. But the real story of Palestinian economic decline isn't primarily about the military conflict, it's about control of land, resources, and movement. Here's how it works. The West Bank is divided into 3 areas, A, B, and C. Area A is fully under Palestinian control, only about 18% of the territory. Area B is under joint Israeli-Palestinian administration, about 22%. Area C is entirely Israeli controlled, that's 60% of the land. And Area C contains all the fertile agricultural zones. The Jordan Valley, one of the most productive agricultural regions, is completely controlled by Israel. Palestinians need permits to travel between villages, they need permits to expand their homes, they need permits to plant trees or import goods, they need permits for birth registration, phone numbers, and driver's licenses. Essentially, every meaningful economic activity requires Israeli approval through a massive bureaucratic system. Imagine being a business person who wants to start a factory or expand farming operations. You don't just apply online, you navigate an enormous redundant broker and bureaucratic apparatus specifically designed to restrict Palestinian economic activity. The water situation perfectly illustrates this disparity. Palestinians make up 80% of the West Bank population, but are allocated only 17% of the available fresh water. Meanwhile, Jewish settlers living in settlements built with massive government and international funding receive 20 times more water per capita. Add to this the settlement system itself. Over 700,000 Jewish settlers now live in more than 200 illegal communities built across the West Bank. These aren't temporary structures, they're modern residential communities with supermarkets, universities, entertainment facilities, and 16 industrial zones containing roughly 1,000 factories. They're designed to be comfortable and economically self-sufficient, deliberately separated from Palestinian areas by walls and checkpoints. The permit system is perhaps the most insidious form of control. Applying for permits isn't automated. Behind every decision stands a complex bureaucratic apparatus designed to control who goes where, who builds what, and who can conduct business. Many Palestinians who work in Israeli areas wake up at 3 or 4 a.m. and queue for 2 to 3 hours at checkpoints just to get to their jobs. It's a daily drain on time, energy, and productivity. The economy essentially becomes fragmented. Industries requiring large-scale resource coordination and human collaboration cannot develop when movement is restricted. Palestinians are effectively confined to agriculture, though officially only 13.4% of the workforce is classified as agricultural workers. In reality, estimates suggest 90% of Palestinians have some involvement in agriculture-related work. Let's be clear about the core economic issue. Economies run on exchange, the exchange of resources, labor, and goods. When one party controls all the movement, all the resources, and requires permits for every economic activity, exchange becomes nearly impossible. This is why Palestinian GDP per capita sits at roughly 1/10 of Israel's. This isn't because Palestinians are less skilled or less motivated. It's because the structural systems systematically prevent economic development. The Palestinian economy is a case study in how political and military control translates into economic devastation. While international recognition remains incomplete and internal governance continues, the fundamental problem remains. An external power controls the framework within which Palestinian economic life operates. Understanding this isn't about taking a political side, it's about understanding how institutions and systems shape economic outcomes, a lesson that applies far beyond the Middle East.